Because ultimately they all have to do with their relationship with God. Because all of the questions that I ask have everything to do with the soul. So I ask them lots of questions. Tell me about your habits. Tell me about your faith life. Tell me about what is it like living in the home you live in. Tell me about your brothers and sisters. Tell me about your history, if you have a history, hopefully not. You have a history of addictions, whether they're active or they're no longer. What kind and how often. Tell me about, have you ever had, unfortunately, been a victim of sexual abuse? Have you ever been involved in pornography? Have you ever had traumas happen to you? And if so, what kind? And all of those kinds of questions will then lead to further questions. And I then, probably over the course of 45 minutes to an hour, begin to try and build a composite kind of sketch of what do we have here. And I'm thinking it all the way along. Is there a doorway? So when people come, and I start asking a lot of questions, I oftentimes will get, people will begin, not always, but sometimes will get threatened. You don't believe anything I'm saying. I said, no, I believe everything. In fact, I never assume anything. I assume everything you're telling me is the truth. As what your experience is, that is the reality. But I said, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. My role in the discernment is to get to the root cause of what are you suffering from. So lots of times people will call me and say, Father, I need an exorcism. I mean, they'll just do that on the phone. I need an exorcism. I say, I don't do them on demand. And then I go on to say that I'm not being a smart aleck. But I do. I'll say, I don't do them on demand. That's not how this works. I says, that you may not need one. I says, I never assume anything. There were two little antiphons when I took the course in Rome that have really been like sort of slogans. One is, the exorcist is the ultimate skeptic. Now, do I believe that Satan exists? Yes. But I'm always listening for doorways. What are the portals through which maybe something demonic may have entered into this person's life? But then the other one is, the last thing an exorcist does is an exorcism. Because they can be very dangerous. If I perform an exorcism on somebody to make them happy, I promise you, it's not going to make them happy. It's going to do a lot of damage to them, psychologically or emotionally. So this is a very carefully derived, discerning, deliberate ministry. In the same way your surgeon wouldn't operate on you because you said, well, Jesus, the pain is here, and that would be reckless. Priests are doctors of the soul. To me, that's what a priest is, not just an exorcist, but I think any priest is a doctor of the soul. Because we're dealing with issues of the soul, and these are issues of the soul. And so when people come in, I'm being very discerning. And as Anne mentioned before, we have a team. Now, when the book came out, there was a bit of a spike in the number of calls I had from all over the United States. When the movie came out, it was like a tsunami for about 3 weeks now. Thank God it's finally calming down. But there's a lot of people who are really suffering. And that's why, I've never been involved in a movie before, a major motion picture. And when Matt Bagglio asked me, how would you feel if I wrote a book about your experiences? And I said, well, okay, go ahead. Neither did he. We never had any envision at all that this would have ended up the way it is. But I will be honest with you, and I'm not being falsely humble, I can't get all that excited about the movie. I mean, it's a good movie. They took some license with some things from the book. I had a very good experience for people on that set with the director and the producer. The executive director's father grew up in the same parish I grew up in South San Francisco in All Souls 93 years ago. It was amazing. I met some really fine people on the set. I had a great time walking down the red carpet with Anthony Hopkins and all that stuff. But I kept thinking about the people who come and see me. And that tempers my excitement. It does. There's a lot of people, when they mention the word, demon or Satan or spirit, it scares people. I can tell you lots of people who've come and talked to me where their therapist has fired them because they mentioned the word Satan or demon. And that is not on the scope of most therapists. Most therapists, I'm sorry to say, are atheists or agnostics. Not all, most. And so, as a priest, even before I got into this ministry, I always sent people to a Catholic therapist. If it was about marriage, it was a slam dunk. But it was even for other things. We're very blessed in this diocese to be able to have, actually, a fair number of practicing Catholic therapists, whether it be psychiatrists or psychologists or marriage and family counselors. We really are. Because in my work, I connect with priests all over the United States, and there's places in our country where priests don't have any access at all to a Catholic therapist. And I think that is crucial because I want people that I'm going to send them to a professional, social scientist. I want that social scientist to be having the same optic as the person I'm sending them, whether it be about marriage or something on a personal basis that doesn't involve marriage. But I want them to have a faith optic. And in this kind of ministry, you obviously have to have a faith optic. And so, to be honest with you, when I've done a lot of these interviews with media, radio, and TV and whatever, and I start talking about the process, there is a whole different body language. Now, they've all been nice to me. I haven't had anybody combative. Nobody's been cruel or mean or disrespectful or anything. But when I start talking about a process, and that it involves a physician, a clinician, and a psychiatrist, and other priests, and other people, there's a whole different attitude. I tell people, I said, I don't get in a fire truck and go off when someone calls me and says, okay, we'll be out in 10 minutes. That's not how it works. But it is real. And I have seen plenty of manifestations of people who have had a demonic attachment. The people fundamentally who come to me are suffering. The vast majority of people who come who have issues not of the diabolical. This is also a piece of good news. They're issues of mental health. But it's my role, my responsibility, in collaboration with a lot of other folk, to help get to the source. What's the root cause of why they're seeing things or hearing voices? 80% of the people who come to me have been sexually abused. 80%. That's a soul wound. When you connect people who've been sexually abused and they've tapped into the occult or to the satanic, the chances of a diabolical attachment go way, way up. Something, if there is something diabolical, they've touched on something that they don't want any part of. Demons have one goal. They want to take as many of God's children and make them disciples of Satan as possible. Because you see, they've already lost. They've already lost. And they know. The war was won. When our name is called and it's announced, it's because we're claiming another being for the realm of the light, for the realm of Christ. Demons operate in a complete reversal. They don't want their name known. Because to have their name known would mean in darkness their power is diminished. And so once the name is known, then I have a much better opportunity to be able to deliver that person from the demon. Demons never travel alone. So usually one exorcism doesn't do the trick. And that's because there's many demons. Demons travel in gangs. Demons operate out of the same hierarchy as the angels. Now I gotta tell you, as a side little story, and I want to be careful with my time because I want to be able to have Q&A here. When I went to the seminary at St. Patrick's, and I've told this story a few times now, including at my 25th anniversary at the seminary when I get up to speak, we had to kind of give reflections on what were our best memories of the seminary? This was my best memory of the seminary, which I think you'll find amusing. I was 25 years old. I worked in the funeral business, which is in the movie and in the book. I worked for Darling and Fisher in San Jose. I was a licensed embalmer, 25 years old, had an undergraduate degree, worked for a while, lived on my own, never been to the seminary before. First class, first day, after Mass. The rector, excellent teacher, the rector comes in, and most of us had never been to the seminary before. He doesn't say good morning. He doesn't say, I'm glad to see you. He doesn't say, open your books. He simply says, name the 9 choirs of angels. Now, the Filipino kid sitting right in front of me rattled them off. And honest to God, my heart started palpitating. Now, I told this story in front of 3 bishops and about 150 priests at Mount St. Pat's. My heart started palpitating, and I started getting flesh. Now, pardon me if I use the language that you don't like to hear at church. And I remember leaning forward and thinking to myself, oh my God, I don't know shit. Now, that's exactly what I thought. That's the only swear word I'll say to them. But I did. But little did I know that I'd be talking about the 9 choirs of angels 27 years later. So in the same way that there is a hierarchy of the angels, there's a hierarchy of demons. And they operate in the absolute reverse as the angels. The angels are in a complete harmony of perfection because of their clarity of free will to give God glory. In the same way, invertedly, the demons are at each other's throats. And the more powerful ones, when it's time for deliverance, are shoving the weaker ones to the forefront. And so it's easy to deliver the weaker demons. When you know that you have powerful demons are the ones where you're working for a few hours at a time and you're not making a lot of progress, or it doesn't feel like you are. And so the work that I do is very dangerous at times. Exorcists get attacked. Demons know where your weak spots are. For me, I didn't know what an attack was until it took me a while to figure out where certain things in my own personal life were becoming much more intense. The intensity of loneliness. The intensity of my own ability to continue being a celibate priest. That I don't remember ever 15 or even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, before this, having such intensity. Not intense questions about should I be a priest, but just in the struggle to continue to being a celibate priest and the challenges and temptations that come with that. They don't go away. And I would think as I would get older that they would have, but they got more intense at times. And so I'm just very aware of that now, and I've learned how to manage that. And the class didn't teach us anything about that stuff. That was kind of like you kind of learn as you go along. When I don't know what I'm doing, I call other exorcists. And there's not a lot in the country, but there's getting to be more and more. And that's some really good news. And I'm hoping that from the book and the movie, it will compel the bishops to really establish a school that we've been talking about. And it will really, I think, hopefully help more bishops have the courage to take this leap and believe that there are priests whom we can train, who can help people who are in this struggle with good and evil. To say that we don't do that anymore, referring to an exorcism, I think is not only a disservice to the church, but I think it's heretical. Because we do it, and we have been doing it, and there is a ritual for it. And in all of those regards, I think our bishops have to also be courageous, like our own personal bishop has been, who does believe. We're very blessed in that regard, because there are some who don't. And I think it's a disservice to people. So, in conclusion, this is a ministry of healing. This involves some profound work at times. The exorcist never assumes anything. My role is to get to the root cause of what people are suffering from. The last thing an exorcist does is an exorcism.